Hello. Welcome to a personalized classroom, making it work for you. This presentation is designed to accompany the book Personalized Learning, a guide to engaging students with technology. My name is Peggy Grant, and I am one of the co-authors of the book Personalized Learning, a guide to engaging students with technology. I taught at the middle, high school, and university level for over 25 years. After that, I received my PhD in literacy education, and I currently work as a senior content developer at Clarity Innovations, working on professional development courses and resources for teachers. I have three goals for this presentation. First, I'd like you to learn the components of personalized learning. Second, we will explore strategies for implementing personalized learning in your classroom. And finally, we will learn how technology supports a personalized approach to teaching and learning. First of all, what is a personalized learning environment? Well, it's not a free-for-all where students make all the decisions about their education, where they do whatever they feel like or learn whatever they want. It's also not more work for teachers because they're having to make separate lesson plans for every single student. A personalized learning environment, just like a traditional learning environment, focuses on standards that have been established by the state or by the district or by the teacher. But within those standards, a personalized environment provides student choice, it promotes student ownership and control, and it integrates technology to enhance learning. In a traditional classroom, all students pretty much study the same thing and do the same thing. But in a personalized classroom, we want to include student choice whenever possible, but that student choice is structured around the standards that students are expected to meet. One of the advantages of the standards that teachers are having to teach to today, particularly the Common Core State Standards and the Next Generation Science Standards, is that these standards emphasize concepts and skills rather than specific knowledge. For example, there is no list of topics to be covered in the science standards or works of literature to be read in the language arts standards. The word dinosaurs doesn't appear anywhere in the next generation science standards. What we do have are basic concepts that students can learn in a variety of ways. So we can reinforce those basic concepts with extensions, and we can provide options for students to show us what they have learned. Here's an example from a secondary language arts class. The standard is, analyze how an author's choices concerning how to structure specific parts of a text contribute to its overall structure and meaning as well as its aesthetic impact. Now, this is the kind of thing that you would have students doing when they're looking at a work of literature in a high school or a middle school, even language arts class. And they could do it when they're all reading the same book. For example, in a traditional task, you would say, how did Mark Twain's decisions about the structure of Huckleberry Finn contribute to the meaning of the book and its aesthetic impact? But you don't have to all read the same book to meet that standard. You could discuss that standard in relationship to any book. And you could have a task such as, how did the author's decisions about the structure of the book you read contribute to its meaning and aesthetic impact? Now again, this doesn't necessarily mean that students would read any book they want, because there would certainly be some books that would be more appropriate for a task like this than others. And that's where the teacher's knowledge of the material that's available and the abilities of their students would come into play. So a teacher could give students a choice of 4 or 5 books, or even 2 or 3. If you're just starting out with trying to personalize your instruction, you might only want to give them a choice of 2 short stories instead of having everyone read the same one. In any case, the more choice you provide, the more options students have for personalize their learning by choosing something that would be more engaging to them. Let's look at another example from an elementary science classroom on the life cycle. One of the next generation science standards is, Develop models to describe that organisms have unique and diverse life cycles, but all have in common birth, growth, reproduction, and death. Now, in a traditional classroom, we would see a lot of examples of using the frog to study the life cycle, looking at tadpoles and frogs and so on, labeling and illustrating each stage. In a classroom like this, you could have students in small groups or individually create their own models of the life cycle of a frog, and they would be pretty much all the same, depending on maybe some different varieties of presentation or the way they were illustrated, but in general, the knowledge portrayed in whatever they created in their model would be the same. But since the standard only mentions the concept of the life cycle and not any particular animal, students could choose their own animal and create a model of its life cycle, labeling and illustrating each stage. Not only does this increase the interest of students because they could choose an animal that they wanted to choose, but it also deepens their learning because they would be taking the information that they learned and applying it to a new situation, which would enable a transfer of their learning and help them apply it in situations outside of the specific context in which they learned it. Another way that we can personalize learning is by asking students to extend their learning into a new area based on an overall topic that we are studying. So for example, in a class that is studying statistics, students could be practicing statistics and learning about statistical analysis. Now, to show what they have learned, we might ask them to work with some statistics that we give them a spreadsheet and have them figure out what it means, analyze and interpret it. Or we could have them look at some kind of advanced statistic analysis, collect their own data about a subject that they're interested in, and create their own presentation of that analysis and interpretation. Or we could learn about the basics of, for example, World War I, and then have students pick a country that they are interested in, maybe one that isn't so well known or one that comes in their own family background, and choose an ordinary person from that country and write a diary that would explain what their experiences were like. These kinds of situations help students understand more in depth, but they also help them engage in a deeper exploration of a topic in an area that interests them. One of the most obvious ways to provide choice in a personalized classroom is to give students options for demonstrating learning. And in this area of common technology, many teachers are doing this by letting students choose different ways to show what they have learned. Where in the past students may take a test or write an essay, now many teachers are letting them choose to do a video, to do a podcast, to do a presentation, to use some kind of an online tool to create animation, or any kind of a technology product. Now, this can be very helpful as long as you make sure that your expectations for the assignment are clear enough that they are including the information that the standards say that they are supposed to know. Otherwise, they can get way off track, get wrapped up in parts of a project, parts of using the technology that are not really moving forward their learning in your subject area. And this can be a way, too, that teachers who have had a very traditional classroom, maybe where they've used tests and essays and traditional assignments, can start to expand by just taking very small steps. For they might ask students they could write a paper or give a presentation, or they could take a test or create a video. You can give kids just one or two options, and even having an option of two things helps students feel more in control of what they are learning because they are choosing something that engages them. Or you could also ask them to create a digital product. There are so many kinds, and teachers will find that their students may be even more familiar with the options for technology that they can use to create things that show what they have learned than the teachers are. The next important way to personalize learning in your classroom is to promote student ownership. And the first way we've already talked about is to give students choices. If students make choices about what they're working on, they feel much more in charge of it and much more committed to making it work. Another way that you promote student ownership is to emphasize learning processes more than products. so that instead of telling students they did a good job, you tell them what they did that created that good product, or you give them suggestions along the way that help them do the things that they need to create high quality work. You also need to help establish routines that make students responsible and accountable for their own learning. You need to make reflection and goal setting part of every classroom, self-assessment, all of these things that students do on their own without the teacher standing over their head saying, do this, do this, do this. We want to create students that can manage themselves. And we also provide frequent opportunities for students to get information about how they are doing so that they can make the right decisions about their work. We want teachers to give them feedback on how they're doing. We want them to get feedback from their peers, and we want them especially to become proficient at assessing their own learning. Many students do not have the self-direction skills they need to be successful in a personalized classroom, and this is the reason why many teachers kind of are reluctant to try making their classroom more personalized, because they just know that their students don't have the skills they need to work on their own. So one of the things that's very important if personalized learning is to be successful is that we need to teach the self-direction skills that are important. We need to, through modeling, direct instruction, through assessment, we need to teach students how to goal set. We need to teach them reflection skills. I noticed that when I was teaching, you'd ask students to reflect and they would either say, yeah, I learned a lot, or no, I didn't learn anything. We need to teach them that that's not reflection. Reflection is looking at the concrete evidence, going back over your work, looking at all of your self-assessments that you did, looking at your goals. It's about giving specific examples of what shows that you learned or what efforts you made towards your own learning. All of these kinds of things are skills that students can be taught and assessed on, and that are critical for functioning well in a personalized learning environment. Of course, you can have a personalized classroom without technology, but technology sure does make it a lot easier. For one thing, it takes advantage of students' interests and skills. Our students are digital natives, and they're used to using technology for all sorts of purposes. But they don't always use them to the best effect or in the most ethical way possible. So bringing those skills into the classroom allows teachers to teach students how to use them better and how to be more responsible in their use of technology. Technology also encourages sensible risk-taking and minimizing the consequences of failure. We love that undo button. And we can try things out, experiment. Students are really good at trying new apps and figuring out how to make them work. And we can try something and see if it works, and it sometimes isn't even that big of an effort to say, well, that's not going to work, or to try it. And students many times, because they are so engrossed in technology, they can be very persistent and patient when it comes to figuring out technology, which they aren't always with other aspects of learning. And what students mostly use technology for is communicating and collaborating with other people. So having the technology be part of their personalized experience in your classroom allows them to collaborate not only with each other, but also with other classrooms, other students around the world, and particularly it connects them with mentors and community members that can help them see the real-life application of what they're learning and help them develop ideas about careers they might want to be interested in. Technology also helps students develop important 21st century skills like information literacy, learning to think critically about information they find on the web, and how to use the technology, which is an important skill for the future as well. And finally, when students are working on technology-based products, they have to learn self-management, they have to learn how to work their time, how to work with each other, and all of those self-direction skills that are critical for success in a personalized learning environment. I thought we could just take a quick look at a Padlet discussion we had at a webinar on personalized learning. You can get an idea of the kinds of challenges that teachers face when they're trying to personalize their instruction. Anyone who tells you that personalized learning is just an easy thing to do that you can take on by just adding a few different little things to your classroom, they're not really thinking it through clearly, because the more personalized your environment gets, the more challenges you face. Now, it's also more rewarding because you have more engaged students, but it can be a big challenge, and some of these ideas are things that we haven't exactly figured out the answer to. There are things that we are constantly working on in our classroom to try to improve our instruction and improve our students' learning. But we don't want to deny that they're there, and that's why those of us who are committed to personalized learning need to stay involved in communities of people who are also trying the same strategies, so we can help each other when we come up with ideas that work, or try something new that doesn't work that will keep somebody else from making the same mistake. So I thought it'd be kind of fun just to look for a minute at some of these points that people made about the challenges they face to personalizing learning for their students. This is Dolores. She is a middle school student whose school is committed to creating a personalized learning environment for all students. Let's see what her day is like. In Dolores' first period class, which is math, her teacher has asked students to learn about how math is used in a career. She gave the students the choice of selecting a career that was something that they would be interested in. So Dolores has chosen to investigate physical therapy because she's interested in that career. She's much more engaged in learning about math and careers because she is picking something that she might actually do for a job someday. Dolores' second period class is language arts. In this class, the students are working in small groups on a project that has to do with a play that they have been reading. And Dolores' teacher has noticed that some of the students, including Dolores, are having trouble staying on track getting their work completed in time. So she is using an online calendar to give them a lesson on time management so they can stay organized. In science, students are studying physics, and they have been put in small groups to design an experiment to learn more about the laws of motion. Dolores doesn't usually like science all that much, but because she and her friends are in a group working on a project that they have chosen, she's much more interested and engaged in collecting the information and learning the science analysis and data collection skills that they need, as well as the scientific content. In her art class, Dolores is studying perspective. Her assignment is to find something in nature that inspires her to create a piece of art that uses perspective. She has chosen a bush in her grandmother's yard and is taking a picture of some of the flowers. This is much more meaningful to her because she has chosen the topic, and if it turns out well, maybe it can be a nice gift for her grandmother. Dolores' social studies teacher has asked all of the students to choose a specific 21st century skill that they want to improve over the course of the year. She suggested to Dolores that she work on her collaboration skill. Dolores knows that sometimes she's not the best collaborator. She tends to want to boss everybody around sometimes, and she often will rather do things herself than try to work with the other people in her group to get them completed. So she has chosen collaboration, and after every project, she is expected to go back, look at her self-assessments, look at the work that she's done, check the specific goals that she made, and then think about how well she is progressing toward meeting her goals of being a good collaborator. In her sixth period class, Dolores and her classmates are creating apps. And she and a classmate have shared their apps to give each other feedback on how well they are doing. This helps them because, first of all, she will get some good constructive ideas about what she can do to improve her app. And she also can learn from looking at somebody else's app. She can learn better about what to look for in her own work. And she can practice using good feedback skills, which is an important skill for the future in any workplace. For a few final words on personalized learning, we're going to Paige Johnson, who is an education strategist for Intel Corporation and a member of the ISTE Board of Directors. She says, personalized learning is the key to engaging students as teachers are leading the way toward making learning as relevant, rigorous, and meaningful inside school as outside. And personalization empowers students to take true ownership of their education. altering the dynamic between teachers and students. Thank you for viewing this presentation.